Today on OTS, the European Union, the impact on America. Showdown 2012, Obama versus Romney. 98.7 KISS FM, sold to Disney. These topics and more. Featured guests, the Reverend Conrad Tillard. You're watching On the Spot with Norman Graham.
3, 2, 1, 0.
Welcome to On the Spot. Got an excellent show here. My first guest, Stephen Thompson. He's an On the Spot correspondent, and we have Reverend Conrad Tillard here in the middle. On the Spot, we'll be dealing with empowering intelligence for our community. First subject, European election.
Well,
Steve,
we're going to get right into it. You hear a lot of information about the global landscape. And the past weekend, there's an issue a lot of people may not understand, but that's what On the Spot's here to talk about. The geopolitical situation. And there's a lot of big words, but essentially there's a problem in the budget in the European system. And there's a lot of issues that go on with paying back debt. So you have two major countries, France, Germany, and also other countries, Spain. But right now, Greece is at the center of the stage. Yes. And what happens is they basically have no money. They're basically close to being insolvent. Now, what does that mean? That means that they can't pay their bills. This is a whole country that basically their debt has overwhelmed them. So France and Germany are trying to work together to figure out how to basically lend them money. And the European Union is 17 union members, EU countries that contribute to a common idea, okay? So right now, the past elections, there was a deal that was worked out. Chancellor Angela Merkel, who is the head of Germany, President Nicolas Sarkozy, who's in France, they had come together to figure out a bailout. Okay. Now Greece said, you know what, we don't like this. So the essential situation was they came up with this thing called a story, the idea that you have to cut budgets, healthcare, hospitals, basically what we've seen in the United States on a state level. So we try to talk to the community. This is happening globally. They had elections. The people revolted. They said, you know what, we're going to throw out Nicholas. Yes. He's gone. And
got a socialist.
Got a socialist. So those type of ideas now are really, they're very uncertain. So right now we're looking at what's going to go on. People don't know. This just happened. The markets in the United States are going to react. So we also have the idea of political interest. Americans' political interests are tied into the success of Germany, France, and of course Greece. So we're going to look at that. We're going to continue. We constantly talk about global. We want the community to know what's affecting their world and some of the issues that go on. Now, we have the Reverend here who travel the world and stuff. Some of your ideas about the parallel between what's going on in our state governments in Germany.
Well, you have some of the same kinds of conversations here in America as you have in Europe. There's a whole idea of austerity. There's a whole idea of pay as you go. There's a whole idea of what are the obligations of a state to its people and its population. Greece and France enjoy the citizens of those countries enjoy tremendous social benefits. They have a tremendous social welfare network.
Long vacations.
Yeah, long vacations.
Subsidized.
And part of what they're pushing back against the Germans and the Brits and others want them to do is shorten their vacations, increase their work weeks. These are part of the things that they're pushing back against. So you see a little bit of the northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere divide in terms of the way the two peoples and the two countries are built and made. But we have similar arguments being made in the United States, where you have people who argue for capitalism and that people should essentially be left to their own devices.
No nationalized health care.
If you are successful in life, you eat. If you're unsuccessful, you don't eat. And so, of course, we're going to hear a lot of this in our own political conversation. And what happens in Europe is going to have tremendous impact upon the American economy. The French election is really interesting because Sarkozy, right of center, a guy, now a socialist coming in. France is going to be very pivotal because it's such an important player. Greece is a small country, but France is such an important player. So that's going to be really interesting.
Well, right now, America's not looking at the parallels because the media is not talking about it as deep as it really is. This is like the conservatives against the socialists of America. Same thing.
Right.
Same thing. Same ideology. We want less government. Same thing. So now, why isn't it getting a lot of play over here in America?
Well, you have an issue of course, in the financial press, because of course the interests of those who own equity, and that's what we define as stocks, bonds, the market moves, the uncertainty of where you're going to put it in the global geopolitical system. So we've looked at a situation where the investment around the globe, so they call these things the BRICS, this idea of countries that are basically, because some of our, let's say, our experience, not our age, but we remember when India was really a backward country in the sense of, I'm not saying the people were backwards, but the economies were. In the idea of the GNP and things like that. Now, they've blown up. And you look at China, which we know is the, 8,000 pound gorilla? So we look at these investments that people are going to get these return on investments over the globe, and you're going to look at not in the United States. And that's what we have the issue about, how we're going to basically develop our economic engine again. When are we going to start it? So metaphorically, it's like GM starting all over again.
Yes.
So this ties into that, and we'll continue with On the Spot, because the community needs to know that this is not just something that happens in Brownsville or Bed-Stuy.
Or overseas.
It's connected.
It's connected to Brownsville and Bed-Stuy.
Exactly.
Yes.
So in that sense, we're going to continue with that, give you the analysis of what's going on, because sometimes it can be very difficult to hear. There's austerity and there's debts, and you hear this thing about 16 billion, 50 billion. Where does this money come from? And what a good cousin of mine said, Stephen, how does a country go out of business? That's a really interesting idea. You know, what is it that a country, and we'll get into our next segment about
tax cuts.
What about the idea of the United States getting some close? So that'll be our next segment, but I think we'll wrap it up and come back to that. But
I just think it's so fitting that at the beginning of the 20th century, you talk about India, you talk about China, talk about all these countries that were under a colonial rule of some of these very European states. Now, at the beginning of the 21st century, Europe and America's place in the world economy is threatened right now because these countries are emerging and they are going to have a great impact upon the direction of the world's economy. And boy, the Europeans are scared.
Oh, this is amazing. It's almost like biblical. It says the first will be last.
And the last shall be first. That's right.
And that end.
Right.
Well, China owns a great deal of America's debt.
It does. We're going to have a great show
deal.
just on that.
So when whoever has too much debt,
they call it
America could be the next one,
there we go.
Going down to the bottom.
That's right.
So we're going to close out this segment, and we're going to be right back after a brief message from our sponsors.